What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. Today is Tuesday and we're going to kick off this week with what possibly might be the lightest 4K drone in the world. This little guy is super lightweight. It can run on 2 to 3S batteries. I don't really recommend the 4S battery, but what's great about this particular Eachine Cinecan versus a lot of the other Cinewhoops out there is that this one has the best of both worlds for 4K micro size whoop style quad. And I say that because you can cinema this quad, or you can throw a 3S battery on there and power loop trees outside and do massive freestyle maneuvers without all the washout that a lot of these other type of quads have. Last week we reviewed the Gep RC Cineking, and the Cineking seems like a beast compared to the Cinecan. And this one is not going to let you freestyle it as easily as this one. This one has 1105 motors on here. You can run this one 2 to 3S, which is going to be fine, but it's going to eat up your batteries quicker. So I think they kind of, they got some things right here with the Cinecan versus some of these other heavier type of power whoops the same size. And I love that you can freestyle this quad like a maniac. You can do a lot of normal type of micro brushless freestyle with this quad, or you can slow it down and do cinema, which is really awesome. So you can also put a 2S battery on this baby and take it inside, indoors, run it around your house, slow it down, scare the cat and the dog or your wife, and you can have a lot of fun indoors and outdoors with that quad. That's the coolest thing about the Cinecan to me. And we're going to talk about some pros and cons in this video. We're going to be real about it. One of the realest things about it is that this power system is only a 12 amp ESC, 4-in-1 ESC with the Crazy Bee F4 version 3, which is good. The next thing is that I like the 1103 power system. You guys, if you've been watching my channel, you know that that is probably my sweet spot for the micro brushless kingdom. I really like the 1103 motors because they're somewhere in between the 1102 all the way up to 1106. 1105 and 1106 seem to just eat up the battery quicker, and they will puff your batteries if you're not careful, reducing your flight time, giving you tons of power, but reducing your flight time and more stress on your batteries. Whereas the 1103 systems seem to be easier on my batteries, but I still have that top end throttle that I'm looking for those big, easy freestyle maneuvers outdoors, like power looping a tree. No problem with this quad, and it has way less washout than the original Beta FPV 85X. And this one got a lot of things right. They reduced the weight on this one versus the 85X and the Cineking, so it's just awesome for freestyle, slowing it down for cinema, and I think they got the weight right on here, whereas I felt like the 85X was definitely too heavy for any freestyle. High throttle maneuvers caused washout on the 85X, whereas this one can just handle all the throttle you can put into it. The only caveat about this quad was the SPI receiver on the bottom. It's built into the flight controller, and this is the receiver that I would avoid if you're thinking about buying this quad. If you want to go out and rip, buy this quad not with the SPI receiver on here. If you have FrSky, get the PNP version and just solder on your own XM Plus. You can even use Crossfire on this quad, which is really fantastic. You could send this up the mountain, come back down, and you're going to get a little over a 3-minute flight time, 3 to 4 minutes depending on what battery size you use. I used anywhere from 300 milliamp 3S for some really nice lightweight power to weight ratio, nice punch outs, and I used I tried 4S, but I wasn't really a big fan of 4S because when you have an 85mm frame, when you start going 4S, it's really hard for the flight controller to handle all that power on such a small frame. Now, one con that I can definitely think about right away is the canopy. If you guys are going to order this quad, order yourself a couple extra canopies because these canopies are very lightweight and they reduce the weight a lot, but they break. So this one broke right here, and in the front underneath the Tarsier camera. But the good news is that the Tarsier has plenty of protection in here. It almost protects completely the lenses. If you give it a little more tilt right there, it will almost completely cover the lens side to side and from the bottom. I did not like the way that they had the dipole set up off the back, so I raised it up through the back of the canopy here to keep it out of the props, because they had it kind of haphazardly hanging down right here. You want to do that. Also put a zip tie on the back so that your battery cable doesn't get pulled and snapped off of your 4-in-1 ESCs. You have your USB port right down here at the very bottom, and to bind up the SPI version, you're going to have to go inside Betaflight, and you're going to have to put in, I'm going to put the bind CLI prompt command down here, and you guys can copy that, and it will put your receiver in bind mode, and then you're going to start your D8 binding inside your Taranis radio. That's the way to bind this one up. So you have to do that. There is no access to the actual button. It's not on the bottom right here, it's on the top part, and you can't get to it because the stack's on top of it. So one thing I would recommend doing right away before you even fly it is probably just put a zip tie around this canopy. And we did this with several other types of little Cinewhoops like this. We did it with the Mobula 7 to keep that canopy sort of in check. I even put a zip tie around here in the front as well, because I did have a crack at the very bottom, and that's just holding my camera still so that I don't have a lot of vibration after I had 2 brakes here. So you want to keep your camera absolutely stationary while you're flying it. Now the frame is actually durable. Outside the canopy being kind of a piece of crap, the frame itself is really durable. You have dual strut support on the bottom, which I really like on this 85mm frame. I did not like the battery housing, this little case that they had on here. I took some snips and cut that off, and I put an iFlight strap on there because that size was actually limiting me to 300 milliamp. I couldn't get my 450 milliamps on there, and 450 will get you above 3 minutes, and that's a nice flight time. And also they got something else right on here. We have the Avon micro props on here, and in the past, on a lot of my reviews for this Tarsier camera, it seems like a lot of different companies are using that style prop. Look, Gap RC is using them, and Eachine is using them because they know that you get less jello in the 4K setup with the Avon micros. You also have not only 1103s, 7000 kV motors on here. We have 3 screws on the bottom, and those are Phillips screws. We have plug-and-play motors set up in here, and they are by color. So red would be your right turn motor, and black is going to be your left turn motor, with 2 bolts on the very top. These are not push props, which I like. So these are nice and sturdy, and the hardware is long enough to get into the motor to hold the prop down. Recently I've seen some companies sending some hardware with their quads, and I won't name any names. iFlight, they're working on that. They've sent some hardware that was just a little bit too short to hold the props on properly without them flying off. So some of these companies, watch out, because they do kind of send some shady hardware. Now, aside from it flying great, it has a really nice power to weight ratio. Like I said before, it does have a much lighter power to weight ratio feel, kind of like getting me back to the old school Mobula 7 type of frame. It feels really lightweight, and it's a lot of fun to fly because of that. And I get the benefit of being able to record 2.7K at 60 frames per second, or I can record 4K at 30 frames per second on here. Also, a note on that is that you guys want to use the SanDisk 32GB Extreme Plus card. This is the one that I've had the best luck with. I don't really recommend anything over that, but you can try it out. I've heard people are using 64GB as well, but 128, I'm not sure that the 128s are going to work in this quad. If someone knows about it, they've tested it and it works, just let me know. But you want to use a high bit rate type of card on this particular quad. You want to use from 70 to 100 megabit bit rate on here. You can find those around the internet or Amazon or on Best Buy. I also like the fact that since we do have this nice power to weight ratio here, and it flies nice, because it is also running the F4 Pro on here. It's the version 3 of the Crazy Bee F4 flight controller, which is running nice and smooth with the 1103 motors and the 12 amp ESCs. Also, I talked about this dipole, raising this up. You want to put a zip tie on that, put some heat shrink around it. That's running over to an IPEX connector on the 200 milliwatt transmitter on here. Cool thing also about this is that it does have smart audio, and you can change the power of the bands and the channels with your transmitter sticks, which is kind of a nice option. But there are a lot of quads out there with smart audio, and we kind of expect that these days. And 200 milliwatt is perfect for any tiny whoop. You also have Betaflight OSD support. You can go in and change things around, add crosshairs, or any other type of information you want. And if you guys don't know about this, this is a dual camera setup running analog camera on one part and your 4K camera. I believe the 4K camera is the one that's up top. Okay, so let's just go ahead and get a weigh in real quick. Let's weigh it without the battery on here and see what we get. It's going to be super lightweight, 66.8 grams. And we'll start out with the 2S battery. And this thing is so far under 250 grams, it's not even funny. It's really cool. Let's just set this up here like this. Okay, if I can get this to balance. I need a bigger scale here, so I can just get this right. 95.4 grams total takeoff weight, under 100 grams. Super cool. Now I'm just going to put this on here like this. This is the 3S 300 milliamp battery. This one is also great. You can see how that's kind of blocking the receiver there. A lot of fail-safes with that SPI receiver. Not a big fan of that one. They need to just kind of stop using that type of receiver. I know it's convenient for the companies and it's probably cheaper, but it kind of sucks to fly. So 92.4 grams with that one. Run the 2S 450 also if you're going to run 2S. This will give you a nice long flight time. Not bad. Alright guys, now we're going to get started here. We're going to do the flight test. Let's go ahead and we're going to start out on that 3S 300 milliamp battery right here. Now, one thing that I did notice, after I crashed it and broke the front of the canopy, I did have some kind of jitter and jello, and that's because the front of the camera was kind of unstabilized at that point, so I had to end up zip tying it down, and that's why I'm going to recommend that you guys grab a couple extra canopies. Once you break the side of it, you're going to have issues. What I would recommend, again, is taking the zip tie and preemptively putting a zip tie around the front of the canopy where the camera is to stabilize it a little bit more, and in the very middle of the stack, and it just gives a little bit of extra strength to your canopy if you do that. It's not much extra weight. And playing around with my guys here while they're flying, he's flying line of sight, I'm flying FPV, and we got one more spectator over there. But what I like about this quad the most is that it's really snappy on the controls, it's responsive, it has that dual purpose to it, cinema or freestyle, and it has a pretty decent punch out, as you can see there. There's a little bit of jello at the high end of the throttle on the full punch outs, but where this quad shines a lot to me is the maneuverability. Number one, the things that I can get away with, like full tree power loops like this. I've not seen another Whoop out there, unless it was custom built, that can really handle a lot of extreme maneuvers without having that washout or that lumber. That bottom end of the loop right there, when you come back around, that's where a lot of flight controllers lose it because of adding prop guards and ducks around the quad. It just changes the whole flight dynamic of the quad. But this is nice because I feel like I have the freedom to do anything I want with this quad, and I love the 1103 power on here. It's powerful enough to do the maneuvers, but smooth enough to be able to get away with extreme tight gaps. There's Tom's airplane landing. What a cool looking plane that is. That is such a sharp plane. Really fast flyer too. I couldn't keep up with it when he took off. There's another full throttle punch out. Tiny bit of jello at the top end of the throttle right there, as you can see, but no washout on that flip right there. Usually high up is where you're going to see your washouts, and now another power loop around this tree. And man, I'm loving this power loop that this quad can do, because honestly, a lot of times I'm doing that with my 3-inch quads and my 5-inch quads, and we can sit there and power loop trees all day long, but it's just handling almost anything I throw at it. And the prop guards are quite durable, so the chances that I'm taking here, I don't feel like I'm gonna compromise the frame, and that's super important to me. If I'm flying something and I break the prop guards, like the Turbo B111 RS, for example, that's one where I had an issue where I broke the prop guard probably about the 3rd or 4th flight. It's not a polycarbonate type of quad frame, whereas this seems to be some super high-end polycarbonate frame. And I say high-end, but yeah, it's just plastic, folks. We don't want to add any extra spice to this review. Spicy words. But I'm happy with the performance, most definitely, and I've flown a lot of different whoops. So that was saying that we're going to fly 2S. So we're on a 2S battery now. We're on that 2S 450, and it really slows this quad down, and this is where you can have some extreme fun. It has a really great clearance. You can kind of scoot under places where you normally wouldn't fly a micro brushless, like trying to make it under all of your buddies' cars and trucks. The whole row of trucks out. Everybody's out flying today. Got some 700 helis up over that one and back under my van, and able to make it through. That was kind of sketchy, but a lot of fun. And back through some leg gap here, and my buddy Tom over here getting his glider ready to go. Hi Tom. And let's go ahead and land it and go back to the studio. Alright guys, welcome back from the flight break. So as you can see in that video, I had a lot of fun flying this quad, and I honestly think it's probably one of the best flying Cinewhoops out there on the planet, and also one of the lightest. It is compatible with HV batteries as well, if you guys want to run HV batteries. They say it does 4S. I'm not a big fan of the way 4S flies on this quad, because I feel like it's just a little bit too small. When you start to get to 85 millimeter and you're running 4S, things get crazy. And I love the power that it has on 3S. It runs just fine on the 3S. If you're going to run a battery on here, you can get the GMB 3S 300 milliamp batteries. This is a happy model one right here, and make sure you order that XT30 connector. But a little bit over 3 minutes flight time is awesome. 3 to 4 minutes flight time on the 450. You probably get up above 4 minutes flight time with a 450 milliamp battery. And some of the other ones out there have to run much larger batteries on there, making them a little bit heavier. I was able to do some mild freestyle with the Cinecan, and with actually minimal washout. So they are getting better over time, which is good. 1 year ago, it was almost impossible to do freestyle with any type of cinema type whoop, mainly because when you added all this extra hardware on here, it really changes the characteristic of a tiny whoop, what normally would feel like a tiny whoop. But some of them get to the point where they're almost too light without the 4K type of setup on there, where they had too much external forces pushing on the prop guards outside. If you've ever flown any of the really small ones, like the 65 millimeter ones, you know about the washout, and they just do crazy things, and then they go back to level. But now we're at the point where I think we're getting somewhere with this kind of cinema whoop revolution, and I think the Cinecan is definitely a sleeper. I think it's one of those ones that it's an Eachine one, so people are probably not looking at this one as hard as some of the other more high quality ones out there. iFlight has had some quality control issues lately that I'm looking out for you guys, and if I see any of that stuff happening, I'm gonna let you know about it. Gep RC seems to have some solid components and very well built stuff, so if you're looking for quality, Gep RC has never usually failed me on the QC part of things. Eachine is actually starting to level up as well, so before, years past, I would kind of scoff at doing an Eachine review. So now I'm to the point where I like what I see coming out of Banggood, and yeah, things are changing and getting a little bit better all the time. But again, we're going to be honest about these reviews and tell you the real pros and cons and the views. I'm not going to lie to you guys. But anyway, guys, I'm going to rate this one at about a 4.8 out of 5, taking a couple points off for just that lame canopy. But other than that, it flies like a beast. So it's kind of smooth for cinema, or it can be a freestyle beast. Either way you want to go, you can have some fun. The best of both worlds here. So it's a big hit, in my opinion. But thanks again, guys, for watching. I'll try to put some links down below for all the spare parts, the frame parts, the canopies, and the props that I'm going to recommend for this quad, and the batteries. Take care, guys. I'm Justin Davis. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.